It's Friday. Congratulations, you made it through the week. It is February 25th, the last Friday of the month here in 2022. Welcome. This is the Food Safety Chat. My name is Brian Armentrout, and I'm the founder of the Food Leadership Group and the Food Safety Foundation. And every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern for Joe, we go live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and we discuss all things food safety. And what you'll notice with this, if you're new to this, is that this is not a presentation. This is not PowerPoint slides and going through a bunch of dry information. This is meant to be an interactive discussion. And every week we bring in an expert and we tackle a new food safety topic. And in the chat, Joe and I receive your comments as they flow by, and we will work those into the conversation. So please, when you have questions, throw them in there. We'll address those. Renee, my assistant, good morning, Renee, helps us out here to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And with that preamble, I would like to say good morning to my good friend, Joseph Lane. How are you doing today, Joe?
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Joe is a superstar auditor with CFS Food Safety. Every week I'm going to change your job title.
And it gets better each time. That's great.
You're now superstar. What was that? Oh, yeah. Remember that old Saturday Night Live sketch with the Catholic girls? Like, you need to do a little thing like this now. Yeah, I won't do the rest of it. We'll let everybody look that up. But good morning, Tim. Good to see you out in Wisconsin. Looks like he's traveling today, so hopefully you're staying warm out there. Jessica, nice to see you as well. Oh boy, I'm gonna mess this name up. Roof Yada. How did I do there? Let me know how bad I slaughtered your name, Miss Omar. How's that? Lance, good morning. Nice to see your face. Good morning, everyone. I guess, right? That's the best way to start it off with. But absolutely. I'm going to hit this early, Joe. I'm going to have everyone join us for our favorite drink. And Joe, where's your cup? You got to join me.
Well, I was just bringing it into
the There we go.
See, and we can all start the jokes now. It's okay.
I mean, yeah, with the Broncos, I don't have room to talk out here. So join us, everyone. Christopher Edwards, good morning, sir. Nice to see you. Yes, Miss Omar works. Thank you. I christen you Miss Omar for the balance of this food safety chat. So God, there's a ton to cover today. And so today we're going into a topic, and Joe suggested this topic, and I think it's an amazing one: preventive maintenance. Right, it's something that, oh boy, if you're a quality manager in a food plant, this is something you struggle with all the time, right, Joe?
Absolutely, and you know we'll talk about things from the location perspective. We'll talk about some things that auditors look for, and as people may or may not know, I'm an active SQF and VRC auditor. We'll talk about auditor perspective on this. We'll talk about what your consultants, if you're using consultants or outside eyes, should be looking for. We'll talk about where the PM programs go wrong. Why is it so important? Well, I want to talk about the use of contract services and training for your food safety training for your maintenance team.
Yes. And speaking of training, I would like to point out our sponsor for our live stream, EAS Consulting Group, who has an amazing training program. You can go to easconsultinggroup.com/training, and Renee will put the link in here for everybody. Check out their training programs. They have online courses, of course, with COVID and everything else. We've all adjusted to that. They have custom courses and other things that you can create with them as well. And if during checkout, you put in the code Brian with a Y, and I don't think it's case sensitive, you'll get an extra 15% off your training. So thanks to EAS for doing that. We really appreciate that. Brian, good morning. Good to see you, my friend. Oh, off to Detroit. So he's going to be cold. Thank you, Renee, for throwing that in there. Greatly appreciate it. So PM, during an audit, right? This is kind of one of those things where it gets to that point in the audit, right? And it's in section 11, and it's kind of toward, the middle, toward the back of the audit, right? So you've got to figure, Joe, as an auditor, if you're in a decent sized plant, you're hitting that on day 2 or maybe even 3, right?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And so generally, I mean, how do you approach that then? Do you go and talk with the maintenance manager to kind of see how things are working, or how do you tackle that?
Yeah, during the course of the audit, the PM program, I'm looking at a bunch of work orders, and frankly, I don't really know what I'm looking at. It's a work order. It says we're going to change the hydraulic on the forklift. Okay, I don't know what that means. I'm not anywhere near mechanically inclined. But like anything else, particularly with lift trucks, and this is something that I try to impress on all my clients. There's no other piece of equipment. All of your equipment in your bakery or your meat plant or your candy plant, all of your equipment, the majority of it is stationary, doesn't move.
Right.
You may have a conveyor that moves from here to there, or you may have a metal detector that's portable. But what pieces of equipment move throughout your entire facility? And those are your lift trucks.
Right.
And your forklifts, your hand trucks, your lift jacks, whatever you call them. They need to be well maintained. They're going from point A to point B. Even if you're in a low risk process, you're still having the potential for transporting dirt and yuck. It's a very technical term, by the way, from A to B. So what I look for in those preventive maintenance work orders is, are they including being cleaned? Or people will throw the word sanitize in there. I don't know how you sanitize a fork truck, but is it at least being wiped down? Does it look like it's clean before it's being put back into service?
No, that's a good point, Joe, because I mean, if we're looking at environmental testing and we're having hits and we're doing a vector analysis, one of the first things you always look at are the tow motors and the pallet jacks, because those things go everywhere.
Yep.
Another good tip on that too, when you're looking at those type of things, is the floor scrubbers, right? Those little portable guys that people run around with the squeegees and the brushes, and it's got the water supply. Those are a very nice distribution system for bacteria if you don't keep those things clean.
Anybody who's ever had me as an auditor will tell you. And I just had this conversation. I finished up an audit yesterday, and I'm walking through their loading dock, and they have, I call them the Zambonis, floor scrubbers, whatever. And when I see one of those, I'm like a moth to a flame. I will stop what I'm doing, walk across the room, and I will look in the dirty water container. And hopefully I just smell soap. Because those things, they don't get cleaned regularly. They're like little germ factories, and it smells like something died in that dirty water container. Now, all of that dirt and death smell is all being now transported throughout your facility.
Well, it's a good point too, guys. I mean, because those little machines, right? I mean, you can get the little ones that you walk behind. There's even the bigger ones that you ride, like the ones you see like in grocery stores or things like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the PM agreements are with the supplier of that equipment. The companies normally, if it's a decent sized plant, they don't own them.
Right.
And you'll put a maintenance agreement in place where they're supposed to come out and take care of these things. And a lot of times those agreements are really expensive. So plants look at that and say, yeah, we can probably take care of this ourselves. And it gets forgotten.
Absolutely. And I was just looking at Jessica's comment. I'd never realized they're the hands. It's true. It absolutely is true.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Well, I think we should start at the beginning and talk about, first of all, why is PM important? And Renee, when he was advertising this session earlier this week, put something out there, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but it was along the lines of, if you don't make time for preventive maintenance, it'll make time for you. It's just like if you don't change the oil in your car, eventually your car is going to tell you should have changed the oil. Yeah. Something will seize up, something will stop running. So obviously one of the biggest benefits of PM is it saves money. Problems are easier to fix when they're small, right? It also helps with calibration. If things are running smoothly, you're going to have more consistency in that equipment. So I think just from the get-go, if for no other reason, it absolutely has a cost savings attached to it.
No, that's a good point. And so part of this is, if you're in a facility and you're running it to failure, that means that if you've got an electric motor that's running something, you have to have a backup electric motor, because you don't know when that dude's going to break down. and shutting down that line is super expensive. So it's like, okay, I better have a backup motor, for 50 grand or whatever,
Right.
sitting in the shop collecting dust. Now multiply that by everything else in the facility, because essentially you're guessing as to what's going to break down next. And a lot of people are like, well, I really can't keep all those expensive supplies, so I'll just do a just-in-time thing, and I'll order from the maintenance guys just before that part I think it breaks, or right after it breaks, and we'll kind of eat that time. Well, how's that working now with the way supply chain is?
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think one of the problems, particularly in today's new world, as we call it, I haven't been to a client, or I haven't been to an audit site in the past 18 months where anybody is fully staffed. Okay.
Yeah.
We just can't find people who want to work these days. So the first reaction is, well, I'm shorthanded. That PM can wait. Okay. Every food plant that I know of has been nothing but busy for the past 18 months.
Yeah.
Mercifully, the food industry came out of COVID pretty much unscathed, from an output standpoint. We may have had some, staffing lines that got shut down, but by and large, the food industry in the U.S. came through COVID in good shape.
Yeah.
But because of the employee shortages that we're all facing now, we'll be tempted to say, we'll let that PM wait till next week. And then next week becomes, next week is almost March. And then here it is May. Oh, I should have changed that oil back in February. Oh, yeah, I'll get to it soon. We're super busy. And all of a sudden, the engine seizes up. It's just, we can't ignore these kinds of things because we're busy.
Right. Yeah. And I had an issue once in the past where exactly that happened. And my CEO was kind of thinking out loud to himself, and I was standing there, and he said something along that lines, Joe. He was like, oh, geez, why did this happen now? This is the worst time. And I told him, I'm like, of course it happens during the worst time. It happens during the worst time because we let it happen, right? We're not cleaning correctly. We're not taking care of our equipment.
Right.
We're working people too hard. We're cutting corners. That's when things happen. That's when we need to be the most vigilant, not the least. And he kind of, you can see this light bulb go off, and he's like, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Right.
You pay me now, pay me later. You're absolutely right on that standpoint. Part of this too, right, is a lot of times on the saving money front too, Joe, is, if you've got an electric motor and you have a 2,000 hour service interval of operation on this thing, and you're hitting it before that point in time, replacing the bearings, cheap. Having a seized up motor that you got to pull out and completely redo,
right?
That's expensive.
Not cheap. Yeah. And even, even to drill down to Martin says from sunny Phoenix. Well, Martin, by all means, rub it in because it's not sunny at all or warm where I am. Even down to smaller pieces of equipment. It doesn't have to be your main processing conveyor or your mixer bearings. It can be smaller things like gaskets and seals. SQF in edition 9 now put this clause in 11.7 talking about gaskets, rubber shafts, impellers, things that wear over time now need to be routinely inspected.
Right.
That can be put on your PM. It can be put on your pre-op. It doesn't matter how you do it. But even smaller items now need to be tracked.
That's a really good point. And this is a nice way to cross-reference. So I'll be curious, your experience as superstar auditor is, if you're seeing a lot of foreign material complaints for gaskets and things like that, you could probably track that back to your PM program.
Yeah.
And people don't realize sometimes too, there's different types of gaskets, right? There's the cheap black rubber gaskets. And then you kind of move up on that. You can get more of a hybrid type gasket, all the way up to a Teflon gasket, which are super expensive. But man, you put those in the right spot, it's going to help you sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And I'll use this opportunity to kind of pound home what I do every chance I get on foreign material is, don't forget, guys, more than half of all foreign material complaints and recalls in the marketplace are for non-metal items, right? So plastic, rubber, these type of things. Guess where that's coming from?
Absolutely. You talk about gaskets and the the importance of a gasket. So I took my wife's truck in to get the oil changed, and come home, and there's a drip in the driveway. Okay, and I got the bolt is tight, and I haven't looked in a couple of days. I was out of town, but I suspect if I go there and again, there's going to be, they probably didn't replace the washer, and for a 50-cent piece of plastic, I now have to go back, have it redone, and it's just time, right? And time is just, hey, Melody, time is just, time is time, and we don't have time, and time is precious. So we don't want to overlook those 50-cent, $2, $3 rubber gaskets because, oh, it looks good. No, if the PM calls for replacing the gasket with each change, then you have to do so. And things that crack as well. So we want to look about those, talking about like Lexan shields and, plexiglass. Now everybody in every facility, they have these plexiglass shields, right? And everybody's gone plexiglass crazy because of COVID. Because COVID apparently can't go around the plexiglass shield that we've put up. It's an impervious zone of non-COVIDness that the germs can't go around. So all of those plexiglass shields that we've now put up in our facilities, and everybody knows when you have them. They're in your conference rooms. They're in your lunch rooms. It looks like you're in prison speaking through the glass wall. Okay, those have to be routinely PM'd or put on some type of a glass and plastics register.
I had this funny vision in my head of Lord of the Rings, right? Gandalf on the bridge. You shall not pass. Right? Exactly the same thing.
The germs.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an embarrassing conversation because, you have lots of those shields in places, and right, for COVID. Originally, the HR, the EH&S people, put all kinds of shields in the plant to make sure people weren't reaching into stuff where they shouldn't. And they still need to get in those areas, right? So they're opening and closing those Lexan shield plexiglass areas all the time. And those things break and crack and chip, and a lot of times people don't even notice it because, you're looking at it every day. That's, part of where we come in is we're extra eyes, right? We're like, hey, that's broken. That's an embarrassing question, right? FDA is coming through your plant and there's a broken shield on a line and there's, direct product exposure. And that investigator says, where's this missing piece? Good question.
No, right. Don't know.
Don't know.
One of the other important parts about PM is how do you track the completion of your scheduled stuff? And I think it's important we talk about the difference between PM and CM. So PM is preventive. CM is a corrective maintenance. That's if something just stops running. Okay. So preventive maintenance is exactly what it sounds like. Corrective maintenance is, this is at least in my definition, how if that conveyor just seizes up, what steps do we take? A lot of places use fancy software systems, and gosh, I just saw one. I can't remember the name of it now, but it includes parts inventory. It tells you when you're getting low on screws and washers and gaskets. That's great, but if you're in a company that is not that sophisticated, I've seen people put their PM program on Google Calendar or on Outlook, or if every 6 weeks I've got a PM, this mouse, okay, then I'm going to put it on my Outlook that every 6 weeks from now, what is the schedule? It's a reminder. So if I put it in Google or whatever, it doesn't have to be a sophisticated. Are they nice? Sure. Okay. But you have to be able to make it more functional than looking really slick.
And you snuck a new thing in there for me, Joe, which I really like. And I want to make sure that everybody heard what you said. Preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance. And this is kind of a unique area, right? Because normally in other areas of the plant, we focus on corrective actions, right? Oh, this went wrong. Let's do an investigation, figure out. And preventive actions are generally overlooked in other areas of the plant. For maintenance, it's the opposite, right? And look at all the benefits we get from having an effective preventive maintenance system. So it never gets to corrective action. I think there's an important lesson there. And I wanted to make sure and underline that so everybody really caught what you said there, because that was a really good nugget.
Thank you. And it's, I worked at a bakery some time back, and the um, the operations manager, the director of operations, was an engineer by education. And every week, like Wednesday or Thursday, we'd get together and we would lay out the PM schedule for the weekend. And we would calculate that if the bakery went down, let's just say midnight Friday night into Saturday, we
Mhm.
had from midnight Friday to like 3 a.m. Sunday before we had to start back up again. So that was basically like 24 and 7. We had like 28 hours to get whatever we had to get done for that weekend shutdown. And we would calculate based on equipment manufacturer recommendations. We needed, if we had, so we had 27 hours, we had 10 mechanics on the weekend. We had 270 work hours to be able to get done what we had to get done. And if
Mhm.
we figured out that this repair took 3 hours, this repair was going to take 12 hours, this repair took 30 minutes, that would all get plugged into a schedule. And it was all done in Excel. It was nothing, no complicated software. Um, that was one of the most well run, when I say run, meaning mechanically, the most well run facilities I've ever worked at, because
Mhm.
all of that PM was calculated literally down to the quarter hour to get done with it. And sometimes, of course, it's like anything else. You open up the equipment, you think it's going to take you an hour, and oh my God, it's going to take me 12 hours now.
Right.
Okay, and that's the one-off. There were times when it was rated for a 3-hour repair, only took an hour because it wasn't as bad as we. Great, so that's time saved. Um, but things, those software programs are great, but you can do just as well with something less sophisticated.
Mhm. Well, and on the software front too, I mean, Google search. There are a lot of online programs out there now, and the majority of them allow you to try them out for free.
Mhm.
So you're not making this giant commitment to buying this PM program and then finding out it doesn't work for you. So the options in those areas have expanded greatly.
Absolutely, and there's it's a if you're going to invest that money, obviously you need to do your homework and shop around and look at several different, and get to play with it a little bit. I find that the free demos aren't always representative of what you're going to get, because they show you all the good stuff. But play with it
Oh, that's
before
a good
you.
point, right?
Well,
Yeah. Whenever, right? If somebody's out there and you're thinking about a software purchase, man, you got to be skeptical, because that salesperson is going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. That program does everything perfectly for what you need. You're going to love it, no mistakes. Well, then you buy it and they go, well, we do need to do some custom code for you for this.
yeah,
And yeah, it's going to cost you a little money for that. Oh, and by the way, once we do this work for you, future updates won't apply and you'll be out of warranty.
yeah,
And now you're stuck.
right.
Right. So be
And
very careful.
that's where that rep needs to be a technical rep, not just a sales rep.
Yeah.
You want to score points with me. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Okay. Tell me what I need to know. So, um, one of the other things of great concern in the industry when it comes to PM is the use of temporary repairs.
Uh,
Now, I've been, I'm an old dude, and I can say that I was a field sanitarian with AIB back in the 90s.
ooh, a sanitarian. Nice.
Sanitarian. And one of the things that AIB had allowed back in the day was the use of duct tape, as long as you dated it and it was within 30 days.
Mm,
Um, Now, as food safety has become more sophisticated, we're saying, and it's interesting, if you look at GFSI, it doesn't say you can't use temporary repairs. It just says that the use of temporary repairs shall be monitored and and tracked, and you'll have a policy on what you're going to do.
mhm.
So, as an auditor and a consultant, when I go into a facility, whether I'm auditing them or they're a client, um, if I see temporary repairs, we have to look at the big picture. Okay, we can't just say no. We need to look at is the temporary repair done in some type of a food safe manner? Okay. Are we using bubble gum and tape? Are we using a zip tie? Are we using um, whatever the case? And obviously, they're all on case by case basis. Temporary repairs are not necessarily the end of the world.
Mhm.
Okay? And I think that there's varying definitions of what temporary might be.
Uh-huh.
If you have to order a part and it's coming from overseas and it's going to take 8 weeks to get here, are you not going to produce in 8 weeks? No, you will have to have some type of a temporary fix. Now, the temporary fix may be 8 weeks, but it can certainly be maintained, in as food safe a condition as possible.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, right? You have to look at these things through that food safety lens. And the more the plant understands anything we do to the process that changes it, we probably need to run this up the flagpole and make sure that the food safety team is okay with this.
Mhm.
And to your point, these things are based on the context. If there's that zip tie you were talking about and it's holding up a line and that is right above exposed product, ooh, that's bad, right? If there's a piece of tape over by the door to the plant that is holding up a hanger on the wall, am I going to pitch a fit about it? Probably not, right?
Right.
And part of this of what is temporary, we can tell right when we go into plants. If you've got that piece of tape on that machine, and it's pretty obvious that's been through more than a few sanitation cycles, right? It's all goobered up and everything else. We know that that's been there, right?
Absolutely.
You're not fooling us. So let's take a look at the standard and see what it says really quickly. So temporary repairs, where required, shall not pose a food safety risk
Right.
and shall be included in routine inspections
Yep.
and the cleaning program. There shall be a plan in place to address the completion of those temporary repairs to ensure they do not become permanent solutions. That's
Absolutely.
pretty
So,
clear.
where do we include that that routine inspection? Well, it could be part of your pre-op. If your facility does daily pre-ops, I think that it should be inspected every day. If you're a 24/7 operation, you don't necessarily do a daily pre-op. I'm certain you're doing some type of a weekly sanitation check, whatever your facility calls it. But it needs to be inspected to make sure it's staying in that relative food safe condition.
Mm-hmm. All right, now, let's up this to the next level then. Oh, hey, here in the plant, we're going to be putting in a new line. So we'll hang out some plastic sheets around that and we'll be fine.
Absolutely, that's fine, right? That's no problem. Or we're going to do construction, but we're going to hang that plastic sheeting in, and everything's going to be the germs won't find their way through. It's perfectly acceptable.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Right? There's nothing to worry about at all. Those contractors running in and out of the plant through that back door, don't give them a second thought.
That's right. What about other forms of temporary repair? Obviously we talk about we make light of duct tape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I travel quite a bit, and I just got finished watching the documentary on Netflix about Boeing and the 737 Maxes, and all of a sudden now I'm like, maybe I'll just drive. Okay. But if you know anybody who's in the aircraft maintenance world, the duct tape is like their best friend. Duct tape and zip ties are like their best friends. So if we have an opportunity for a more sophisticated means of a temporary repair, I think that's fine. And then as you said, the standard talks about where necessary. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we just keep it practical.
Right. Well, and I think, right, this is where that daily inspection piece, right, of keeping track of what's going on in the plant. Because a lot of times too, I mean, things change all the time in production facilities. And let's say you've got something coming off of a line, you have packaged product coming off and the conveyors aren't quite matching up. So the operator takes a piece of cardboard and throws it in between, right? Those are indicators, right? Those are little indicators. So when you see those things, it's like a recording form, right? If you're getting recording forms back from the plant and they're not filled out completely, or they're scribbling information at the bottom, right? That's another type of temporary fix.
Right.
The operators are telling you that there's something in that process that isn't right that needs to be corrected. Those things are little warning signs for you. And if you don't go out and look, you're not going to see them.
I like Christopher's comment. Don't use Teflon because it's too expensive. Use duct tape.
Very true.
Let's shift gears for a second. And I want to speak about the importance of your PM program. Okay. And I don't think facilities quite understand the reach across your food safety management system that a bad maintenance program can have. If you just go through any of the GFSI codes, in SQF, there's probably 7 or 8 different clauses where it may not be directly related to maintenance, but bad maintenance will impact it negatively. Building materials, lighting, dust and insect proofing, ventilation, your pest control program. If you've got holes in your doors and holes in the walls that mice are going to come in through, it's going to impact pest control. If you've got holes in the floors that maintenance needs to fix, they're good harborages for germs. In BRC within section 4, right, site standards, the whole section talks about maintenance efforts. Section 8, high risk and high care. Again, if your facility is not maintained, it's going to have an impact on food safety in sanitation, in pest control, in housekeeping. It's going to make a PM, and people don't seem to quite get this on the audit side or on the client side, that your maintenance program is probably one of the most, and when I say one of the most, top 2 or 3 most important overreaching programs in your plant. And if we don't treat it that way, it'll let you know quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And I like to throw in little tidbits and tricks of the trade I've learned over the years. And one of the things that's really interesting that some people don't know, we have a sophisticated group here who join us for these calls, but other people may not know. And so, for example, your insect lights with the UV lights inside those, generally they'll tell you those are good for a year. But what people don't realize is over the course of that lifespan, that UV bandwidth and the wavelength of effective reach changes, right? So that bulb at the end of that year is hardly effective at all. But if you look at it, it looks on, right? You're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And you just walk past it. Put those in your PM. And you need to change those at least. I also learned the other day from a client that they now have LED versions of those bulbs.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. And I think Lance, as the resident IPM guy, can verify this. I read somewhere that the UV, the regular fluorescent style UV bulbs, you lose 5% a month.
That sounds right.
UV weight. So after 12 months, they're more than half less effective than they were brand new.
Exactly.
Martin raises a good point that if again, it's got to come from the top, right? So any food safety program, whether it's food safety culture or food defense or calibration, everything has to come from the top down.
Exactly.
Mario.
What's Mario saying here? Good morning. Temporary repairs are common processes for main departments in Latin America. Most of the time, manager cheer up employers that are ingenious, right? Not very good practices. Talking about food safety culture, how a company and food safety manager tell them that they need to change this kind of bad culture. Yeah, hey, great, you're saving us money. Well, short-term gain, probably some long-term pain coming your way, right?
Yep.
Here's something that was really cool that I used to love. It's an older program, and there's newer versions of different things out there. But have you ever heard of Wonderware, Joe?
Wonderware?
Yeah, so it's an in-plant monitoring system that lets you track electrical usage and pump outputs and things like this. And if I had a customer complaint, one of the first things I would go to the maintenance manager's office, and we would sit down and go through the Wonderware data. And I could look at the pumps, and you could look at the amperage usage on those pumps. And if during that production run, I saw a big dip, Ooh, what happened to the pump at that point in time? What was going on? What was happening, right? You can use those tools to look at your CIP systems and things like this and get some really amazing insights into how the equipment actually functioned during a run. So these type of programs are more than just what they're being used for in some cases.
Absolutely. By the way, Mario, it's great. I haven't talked to Mario in, gosh, a couple of years now, so it's good to see him here. What about contractors in our facility? We go through all these steps and go through all these hoops and these training sessions to make sure our own employees are doing the right thing. Now we're going to bring in outside contractors to work on our forklifts, to work on our refrigeration systems, to work on our oven controls. How do we keep them under control? How do we ensure that not only are they handling themselves in some sort of GMP compliant manner, but are they also providing the level of expertise? I would hope that they would, as the certified, lift guy repair person. But how are we making sure that they are towing the line, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't. What are you talking about, Joe? I'm just an electrician. I don't know anything about this food stuff that you're making here. I'm just here to fix the wiring.
Right. Why I have to wear this hairnet? Why? It looks silly. It looks stupid. I look stupid wearing it. Well, okay.
Exactly right.
Exactly. Because
I mean, if if you're a plant manager and you're bringing in maintenance, contractors or things of this to work on a project, it's local guys, right? There's no specialized food contractor for the little jobs that are, flying in just to do that. No, they're hiring Joe's Plumbing from down the street,
right,
to come in and do that.
How, then that leads to, how do we train our in-house maintenance folks to grasp and understand their level and their role in food safety? Maintenance teams, they live in that shop. It's their own little corner of the universe. Nobody's allowed to go in there because it's the maintenance guy's shop. We're not allowed. But one of the things that I always key in on during an audit is the maintenance shop.
Yes.
And again, I'll tip my hand. One of my big bugaboos when I'm in a maintenance area is the first thing I do is, if I see a drill press, I go right to it. Like I'll just walk through, just go right, because all you see are the little curly Q shavings everywhere. They're on the floor, then they're trapped. And I just did a demonstration at a facility. We're in their maintenance area, and if I took one of those little curly Q shavings, I put it on the floor and I stepped on it with my shoe. I wear steel toe shoes when I'm doing these things, and all of a sudden I picked up my foot, and the metal shaving was gone. It was like the shell game, here it is, now it's there, now it's gone, here it is. And I said, "Where's that metal shaving?" And they said, "Probably on the bottom of your shoe." I picked up the bottom of my shoe, there it was. And I took about 10 steps, and it fell off my shoe. So I said, "Look, here's the point. Class is in session. This stuck to my shoe. I'm a maintenance worker. This stuck to my shoe. Now I've walked out into the plant, and this metal shaving has fallen off my shoe. Where did it go? It's in the plant somewhere, and you know where it's going to wind up, right? It's going to wind up in your product. Because it's like magnifies itself." So our maintenance shops need to be kept to the same sanitation standards as our locker rooms and break rooms, our office areas, our battery forklift charging areas. We can't just say, "Well, it's not a production area." Well, okay, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's not a production area. But the impact of the bad things that can come out of there is pretty significant.
Yep. And yeah, I'm curious your take on this. My view is that, yeah, odds are 95%, maybe even 100% of the time, if I'm in a production facility and I go into the maintenance shop, and to your point, it's pristine, right? Everything is labeled 5S, tools are put away, the floor is clean. You could go in there and eat your lunch, right? Odds are the rest of the plant's in good shape too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's the attention to detail.
Yeah.
Okay. If the, I call them the ancillary areas, if the ancillary areas are treated in the same manner as the production area, you know that there's an attention to detail.
Yes.
And you know, we've all been, I think, around the block long enough to remember the good old days,
Mm-hmm.
pre-GFSI, and the good old days in the '80s when we're like, it's just food. No one's we don't. It's just food. Um, you know, where you'd walk out into the production area, and there'd be the mixing operators there with a cigarette, smoking on the bakery floor. You know, how are you? I'm like, what are you doing?
And the equipment's all sealed in.
Don't worry about it. I'm just making dough. It's okay. And I think we all can remember those days and appreciate how far we've come.
Yes.
But I would venture a guess to say that those places haven't survived in today's new world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the places who hold their allied staff, their maintenance workers, their sanitation workers, office staff, if they're held to the same level of accountability and the same level of expectation as from what we have come to demand from our production teams with regards to cleanliness of your area,
Yeah.
all it can do is benefit the whole program.
No, absolutely. And I think this segues back to a topic I wanted to circle back on, because I think it needs reemphasizing. But Musa here was talking about, I found a lot of benefit from bringing in both safety and quality reps together in a meeting with contract leaders before they start the work and having them understand our GMPs. And that's
Excellent.
helped for some small projects, 100%.
Excellent.
And also spot check randomly. So this gets back to a training topic. And this is something I think is really, really important, is in my past companies, we would work really hard to make sure that the maintenance department was the group that was training.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't want the maintenance group to think, oh, all that GMP and food safety training and stuff, that's the quality guys. Go talk with them if you want some training. We don't worry about that. No, you want that coming from the maintenance department. You want them leading their own training, because who do you listen to, right? You listen to your boss, right? So when your boss, the maintenance manager, gets up there and says, okay, guys, we're going to do our quarterly GMP training here. Let's look at this information and see what we've learned, and let's go over some of the mistakes we've had over the last quarter to make sure those don't happen again. Put the responsibility where it belongs. Also with the contractors, make sure that the maintenance department is the ones training the contractors. And here's a little tip of something that I did, and this becomes more important the bigger the plant. So when I was with White Wave Foods, we had plants with 800 employees in the plants, right? Lots of people coming and going. Lots of projects on any given day, contractors all over the place. We built into our contracts with our outside service entities, so it didn't matter who they were, maintenance, pest control, whatever, that if you're working on a project and we found a violation, right? So to your point, right? Let's say there's a maintenance contractor who's in a back area, warehouse or whatever, it's still a GMP area, and they're drinking a soda or whatever, right? And we find that they're doing that, or we're doing an investigation or things of this nature. We would fine those contractors for those failures to comply and make sure that their people were following our rules. It's a really fast way to get their attention, because now all of a sudden, if you're deducting from their invoice, right, money talks, right? It's a lot more effective.
And we can all simply say that it's unfortunate that it takes that to get that point across. But as you said, if you want to catch someone's attention, put your hand in their wallet and you see how fast you get their attention.
Right. The best time to set that up is before you pay them, right? When they're sitting in front of you, getting ready to sign that contract for that new piece of work in your plant. Oh, and by the way, make sure you read the section here on fines for failure to comply with training and safety and GMP requirements in our plant, because we will enforce that.
Absolutely.
Gets their attention.
Now, what about when, and it's funny, Miss Omar stole my closing line because I was going to end the day by saying PM will make or break you. See ya. Um, um, how about the situation where you've taken a piece of equipment offline
Mm-hmm.
and without getting into the need for lockout, tagout, that's a whole separate conversation. But what about when that equipment has been PM'd or CM'd if it's broken down? What steps are we taking to make sure that that machinery is clean enough to go back into service? And there needs to be a series of things that happen there, from the mechanic working on it. And I really do feel strongly about parts accountability. If an operating room counts the number of sponges they use in your surgery to make sure they didn't leave one in you, I think that's a pretty good approach, and we should follow it. If the PM job called for 5 bolts and I've got one left, I either forgot to put one on or I brought out 6 by mistake. Accountability.
Right.
Is who's signing off that it's been cleaned? And that may be just a simple wipe down, or it may have to go to the sanitation team for a more in-depth cleaning before. So what does that process look like? Is it documented step by step? We have enough issues out there now with recalls from naturally occurring organisms, bacteriologically, that we don't want to now introduce stuff during the maintenance process.
Right, and that's a really good point, because things deviate when you go outside of your normal procedures, right? So a machine goes down. So number one, to your point, something went wrong with our maintenance program associated with that. Let's circle back and don't forget that. But the mindset at the time is, holy crap, all right, the line is down, get it back, right? And the operation guys are pushing to get that line going again. That's why they're there, right? They got to get the orders out the door.
Yep.
But to your point, right, somebody needs to be there that goes, okay, great. Now let's make sure everything is correct and that we're sanitized and everything is cleaned and everything's accounted for before we start up. Right?
Absolutely.
Remember, this is part of your food safety activity, right? And FDA can look at this information.
And who's responsible for that? And this is just my opinion, but your facility PCQI, if you're in a FSMA regulated industry, if your PCQI is the person responsible for signing off on all of your food safety paperwork, why would they not be involved in the sign off of equipment coming back into manufacturing? So just something to think about, another set of eyes looking at it.
It needs to not be the people who did the work.
Right.
And let's see here. So I guess some good comments here. Yep. So CM, corrective maintenance. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to start using that term. I love that. If you picked up anything from today, I love having Joe on these chats because he always brings these nuggets. Preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance. I love it. Old tricks to change mindset. Thank you, Joe. Also, put your hand in your wallet and get attention. Absolutely. So, I mean, to bring this back to the 50,000 foot level, and so pretty much anybody who's familiar with the GFSI codes and SQF, right? We're going through line by line, right? And if Joe is in your plant doing an inspection, doing an audit to the standard, what we're talking about here is exactly the same things that he's going to be talking about in the plant. And again, right, having good processes and procedures is not simply documentation. It's being able to tell your story of why you do the things that you do. Are we always going to be perfect? No, of course not, right? That's why Plan, Do, Check, Act exists, right? Mm-hmm. And it applies to maintenance as well, right? So you need to have the methods and responsibility. You need to have a control schedule in place. And to Joe's point, it doesn't need to be fancy. It can be written on a board somewhere, right? It can be an Excel file. Right. It depends upon the sophistication and complexity. You've got to start somewhere, and that's fine. Failures need to be documented. Site supervisors should be notified when repairs are being undertaken in the GMP areas, right? Any potential threats to food safety need to be evaluated. Temporary repairs should not cause a food safety risk. Should? No, shall not cause a food safety risk. Sorry for that. Food grade lubricant, right? We haven't talked about this one. This is something where people get caught up on too. Uh, one of the rules I would do is just why even have the confusion? Just go to food grade lubricant everywhere, right? They don't have to worry about what's food grade, what's not food grade. How do you know? How do you tell? Is it just because the tube is laying there? Does that mean it's food
Right.
grade? Maybe, maybe not. Is food grade more expensive? Yes. Do you need to change it more often? Yes. Does it solve you a ton of grief? Yes. Right. Paint. This is something that people ask about in the SQF standard. Why does it say that paint used in food handling, da, da, da? Well, remember, SQF, like most of these standards, is international. And there's areas of the world where paint is used on surfaces for food contact. You have equipment in high temperature, high humidity areas where they're rusting. And so paint, although it's not ideal, may be for that particular market the only solution they have. So that's written into the standard. Does that apply in the US? No. I mean, would Joe as an auditor, would you ever allow that? No, right? It's based on the context.
Exactly.
Maintenance staff and contractors have to comply with these rules. Maintenance and engineering contractors are required to be trained. How is that documented? Who is doing that training? And again, my point on that again, maintenance should be responsible for the training, not quality. Otherwise, if you're the quality manager, you're getting around like a chicken with your head cut off trying to catch everybody. Did you train? Are you trained? Have you got your training? No, that's a waste of your time. Put the responsibility where it belongs. And maintenance staff and contractors shall remove all tools and debris from the activity, right? And you need to recheck before, right? And give it that blessing before you restart to make sure everything is set. And everything that we're talking about has to be documented, right? As the FDA says time and time again now, if it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Correct. One of the things that I actually forgot on my list of stuff, and you touched on it, is food grade lubricant. Okay, and I want to just spend a few minutes talking about that. Food grade lubricants are usually a vegetable oil or some type of edible oil base. Okay, whether it's canola oil, vegetable oil, corn oil, with some stuff in it. Okay, I cannot emphasize strongly enough that food grade does not mean it's edible. Okay. All food grade lubricants are approved for what the FDA calls incidental contact. And it's just what it sounds like. It dripped into the dough. You didn't catch it. Now you've got a blob and your 800 pounds of dough. You don't necessarily need to throw away the 800-pound dough. Okay. However, before we go, all willy-nilly here, it does not give you the permission to like lube up those bearings, man. Like the grease, you put so much grease in that fitting that it's eking out the bearing, the nipples exploding, it's dripping down. When I see a facility has put catch pans under a bearing, that tells me they don't know that a little bit goes a long way. We don't need to be lubricating these bearings to the point that like there's this gunk oozing out. Okay.
Yeah.
So if Brian wants everybody to remember the CM for the day, I want everybody to remember this. You don't need to goob this stuff in there to a point where it's dripping. Just a little bit of grease is all it takes. And if it means you have to lube it every day, then you lube it every day. And that's the price we pay for being in business.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the maintenance guy's like, all right, I don't want to deal with this for a few more days, so I'm just going to come in, right?
Like, I love Chris's comment. Food grade going in does not mean it when it comes out. There's more ways than one, my friend.
Good one.
But it's and if it's I believe it's H1. It should say that on the tube that it's a USDA approved H1 lubricant. If during the course of a site audit, if I'm walking through the facility and I see tubes of lubricant out, they had better be a food grade lubricant. And contrary to popular rumor, WD-40 is not a food grade lubricant. Listen, I'm a big. I thought I had a can. No, I don't. I thought I had a can up here in my office. I'm a big WD-40 guy, right? WD-40 and duct tape fixes a lot of things that go wrong in your home.
In your home.
But it's my home. It's not a commercial food plant. So just make sure that if you are using lubricants like we all do, if it's anywheres in that production room, even though it's not near or above a product zone, obviously like the upright mixers, the big commercial bakery mixers, the chains that are in those closed housings, it's not a food contact area. It's really hot in there. You'll blow through that food grade lubricant. You need the heavy duty petroleum based stuff. I get it. Just be real careful how we're using lubricant, where we're storing it. If it's anywheres near a food contact zone, above, near, adjacent, it needs to be food grade.
Yep. So in closing on the PM piece of this, right, I think the overall message on this, and hopefully Joe and I have been able to communicate this to everybody on the call, and thank everyone for joining us today with your comments. Excellent as always. Preventive maintenance and maintenance activities are not something that's shoved back in the corner of your plant, right? This is an important aspect of food safety and food quality and how your operations work. And to Joe's point, if you don't have a successful PM program, this could potentially make or break your operation, right? You may not be in business 5 years down the road if you don't have a good PM and maintenance program in place in your facility. So this is an important area that we need to make sure that we're up on in quality assurance, and we're looking at these standards. This isn't something that's just a secondary thought. You need to really focus in on this. So hopefully we've been able to give you some good tips on this today. So we have unfortunately reached the end of our time already. It has really flown by. We hit the main points. So I think, mission accomplished there. And we'll be back here next week at the same time. So Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern for our next topic. And next week, we're going to have Dr. John Spink on from Michigan State. So of course, well-known expert in food fraud. And I've been trying to get Dr. Spink on the show here for quite a while. So I'm really excited about that. So make sure to be here next week and check that out, because it's going to be very interesting. Again, food fraud and all these type of activities are something that we don't necessarily think about as much as we should. So make sure and pay attention to those activities. Also, again, thank you to my sponsor, EAS. Really appreciate everything that those guys are doing over there in the world of food safety. And this week, I'm also going to post, and our emails are here too, so reach out to us directly. If I'm going to post on LinkedIn, again, right, we emphasize on this time and time again how important this interaction is, right? We're here to help you and help transfer this food safety information from the little things we've learned over time. And what do you want us to talk about, right? What other topics are sitting around, rattling around in your mind that you would like us to discuss on this chat? So drop us a line. And if you have some ideas on some topics you would like us to cover, we'd love to hear it. So I don't know. Any other closing thoughts around PM, Joseph, or anything else?
No, but to touch on your last point, and Brian's asked me to come back a couple of more times. I don't know why. He must be a glutton for punishment. But one of our future chats, I'd like to hear from the people in the industry. What's important? What do you all want us to talk about? So I think that's a great idea.
Yep. So absolutely. We're here for you, right? We're all in this together with food safety. So thank you again for joining us, your commitment to food safety and sitting through and listening to these conversations and growing your knowledge. We appreciate that. And thank you for being here, right? We all get better by things like this. So thanks again. And have a little bit of fun too, right? So if this is your weekend coming up, go out and enjoy it. Here in Colorado, it's been cold. This weekend is supposed to be getting back around the 60s. My giant piles of snow out here will be melting. So that's a good thing. So enjoy life, and we'll see you back here next Friday. Thanks again, Joe.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, everyone.